You probably think coffee is coffee, no matter when you drink it, that timing couldn't possibly matter. I believed that too, and it was working against me for years. This isn't a story about giving coffee up. I'm 83, and in one controlled study, participants who took caffeine even 6 hours before bed still lost over an hour of measured sleep time compared to placebo. For years, I drank coffee whenever I felt like it, sometimes well into the evening. I never once thought of it as a habit with consequences. You've probably got a version of this same untracked habit, something so normal you'd never think to examine its timing. That 6-hour number is what made me start tracking mine. In a minute, I'll show you exactly what I changed. Here's what I eventually learned. An erection depends on 3 systems working together: hormonal, nervous system signal, and blood flow, governed by nitric oxide. The hormonal piece, testosterone, is produced primarily during deep sleep, overnight. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours, sometimes longer depending on the person, which means a cup consumed in the late afternoon or evening can still be active in your system well into the night, quietly disrupting the deep sleep your body needs for that hormone production to happen properly. I'd always assumed caffeine either kept you awake or it didn't. A simple on-off switch rather than something that lingers for hours, quietly working against sleep quality long after you've stopped noticing any obvious alertness from it. These days, I have noticeably more energy earlier in the day, which surprised me since I expected the opposite from cutting back on evening caffeine. I sleep more deeply, waking up less through the night, something I hadn't even realized was a problem until it stopped being one. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I never once suspected timing, specifically, was the issue rather than the coffee itself. I love coffee. I want to say that clearly because this isn't a story about giving it up entirely, just about being honest with myself about when I was actually drinking it. Here's what reframed everything else. The blood vessels involved here are some of the smallest in your entire circulatory system, smaller than the ones feeding your heart, so circulation issues tend to show up here first. Researchers who study this treat it as a meaningful early signal. It's one of the reasons doctors who specialize in this area often say that erectile difficulty can act as an early warning sign for cardiovascular problems elsewhere in the body, sometimes showing up years before a heart problem would otherwise become obvious through any other symptom. For 3 years, I slept 3 feet away from my wife, and it felt like 300 miles. She'd fall asleep first. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't just age. Here's what no one ever sits a man down to explain. This isn't about willpower. It's about specific systems in your body quietly losing steam year after year, while nobody tells you it's even happening. The pills my doctor handed me gave me headaches, made my chest feel tight, and honestly, they made me feel like I needed a pill just to feel like a man. I wasn't willing to live like that. There's a gentler way to bring those systems back, without any of that. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore. I'll show you exactly what changed it in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's what I actually changed. I set a personal cutoff. No caffeine within 6 to 8 hours of bedtime, and I kept my coffee earlier in the day instead of eliminating it. That single adjustment, just moving the same habit earlier rather than removing it, made a measurable difference in how deeply I slept within a couple of weeks. And deeper sleep meant more of that overnight hormone production actually happening the way it's supposed to. I want to be clear, this is a completely separate thing from moderate morning coffee, which some research actually links to better outcomes in this area specifically. This is entirely about timing, not quantity or the beverage itself. I added a few other pieces. Vegetables rich in dietary nitrate, supporting circulation from a completely separate direction. A short walk most mornings in real daylight, supporting the blood vessel lining directly. Less alcohol, since that disrupts sleep in a similar way to late caffeine. It took about 3 weeks of consistently respecting that cutoff before the improved sleep became reliable rather than occasional, and I had to resist the temptation to break the rule on nights I felt especially tired and wanted the extra lift. The cutoff itself was the easiest rule I've kept in years, mostly because it didn't ask me to give anything up, just move it earlier. That distinction, moving something instead of removing it, turned out to matter more than I expected for actually sticking with it long term. My wife and I took a weekend trip recently, and I fell asleep within minutes of getting into bed both nights, something that used to take me the better part of an hour, tossing and turning long after she'd already drifted off. She noticed the difference before I even mentioned the change I'd made. I think about a man named Gerald who wrote in, 68, who told me he'd never once tracked when his last cup of the day actually was, assuming that as long as he wasn't drinking coffee right before bed, timing didn't matter much. He said learning about the half-life specifically, hours longer than he expected, was what actually convinced him to change anything. If you're on medication for blood pressure or your heart, please hear this clearly. Nothing here replaces your treatment. Mention anything new to your doctor, including caffeine intake if you have any heart condition where it's relevant. What I want you to walk away with is this. It's not always what you're doing that works against you. Sometimes it's when you're doing it, and that distinction is easy to miss until someone points it out specifically. I'd evaluated my own coffee habit in strictly binary terms for decades, good or bad, keep it or quit it, without ever once considering timing as its own separate variable worth examining. That subtler question, not whether but when, turned out to matter more than the blunt yes or no version I'd been asking myself the whole time. Gerald said the half-life number stuck with him the most, more than any other detail, because it reframed something he'd been doing his whole adult life without ever questioning the actual duration of its effect on his body. He told me he'd started setting a reminder on his phone for his own cutoff time, something that felt almost silly to need at first, until he realized how easily the old habit crept back in without that small nudge. He said the reminder became unnecessary after a couple of months, once the new timing simply became automatic. We tend to evaluate habits in binary terms, good or bad, keep it or quit it, when the actual variable that matters is often something subtler, like timing, that never even makes it onto our mental checklist of things worth questioning in the first place. I want to be precise about what I'm actually describing, because I don't want you to hear this and think coffee itself is somehow the enemy. It isn't. Moderate coffee earlier in the day is a completely different thing than the specific habit I had, which was caffeine creeping later and later into my evening without me ever tracking it. Your erections don't disappear just because you got older. They fade when the systems behind them, blood flow, nitric oxide, hormones, energy, and recovery, slowly stop getting the support they need. Ignore that long enough, and it becomes harder to reverse. That's why I take this concentrated formula every morning. Not one ingredient trying to fix everything, but several working together to support circulation, energy, and drive from the inside out. It's a natural, doctor-backed protocol designed to support pathways your body already knows how to use. No prescription, nothing artificial. Stronger, present, confident again. And unlike the pills I tried, I didn't feel disconnected from my own body. No headaches, just steady, gradual change. My wife noticed before I even said a word. The presentation is linked right below this video. It won't replace your doctor or a healthy lifestyle. It's simply there to support your body. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore, and it's not too late for you. I think about the man I was, drinking coffee whenever he felt like it without ever tracking timing. And I think about the man I am now, who found the one adjustment that actually mattered. That's not vanity, that's dignity. If you've got a habit so normal you've never examined its timing specifically, tell me in the comments. And if this kind of precise, practical distinction is useful to you, subscribe. There's more of this ahead.